This is the Peter Greenwood Show. We are still doing the Glasgow Film Festival. Sitting opposite me is a gentleman who has directed a film. Could you tell me your name and your film title, please?
My name is Jim Hosking, and my film is called Ebony and Ivory.
So it's described as what happened when Paul McCartney met Stevie Wonder at a farmhouse on the Mull of Kintyre. Now, I'm from the Mull of Kintyre. I grew up in Campbelltown, and I've heard about Paul McCartney, but I'd never heard of Stevie Wonder going there. So going into the film, I was very much like, okay, this is interesting. And then I saw the film. How did this story happen? Where did it come from?
Well, you know, I can't say that I'm entirely sure, but I think that I was probably thinking sometime during COVID about making a smaller scale film, and I imagine I probably was having a shower one morning and then was thinking about the song Ebony and Ivory or whatever. I mean, that's something that has kind of stuck in my head at times in my life. I have a very specific memory of my best friend when I was like a very young kid was and still is he's a black guy, and I remember on FA Cup final day walking down the street with him, both of us in Arsenal kits, singing Ebony and Ivory together, and I'm doing it kind of as a bit of a joke, but it's something that makes me laugh a little bit when I think about it. And I wouldn't say there's ever a great deal of logic in anything that I do or make, and in a way on purpose. I'm a little scornful of being too calculating and too strategic in what I do, but I obviously had an idea about writing, I suppose like a sort of dreamlike account of these two guys coming together to make this song, or to, the song being the end result of it. Long answer, sorry.
That's okay. The longer the better. As we see when they're running down a certain country lane in the movie.
In the nude?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that could have happened. You never know.
You never know. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm not saying it did happen, but it's possible. We know that Paul McCartney and John Lennon like to have fun together.
In what way?
Well, Paul McCartney has come out and said that they like to together have a...
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I had no idea about that.
Oh, wow. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to spoil that for you.
No. Well, no, you've opened up a new
Is there a sequel
Googling
coming?
Opportunity.
Or a prequel coming? If you
I wouldn't use that word. No, I don't think so. Although I did think there's a friend of mine who is in a film that I made, my first film called The Greasy Strangler, who... He wears a pig's nose in that film. He's called Oinker in that film. And as I was prepping Ebony and Ivory, I did think, Joe looks kind of like Elton John. Maybe there should be a little cameo of Elton John turning up at the house for a moment. But I didn't do it.
Elton John would have been... I mean, it's a good film. There's already enough icing and enough cherries on the cake, but they want one more little cherry. Would have been good. So let's talk about casting, because... when you first see Paul McCartney, he's looking out over the Mull of Kintyre and Stevie Wonder's rowing on in. And there's echoes of McCartney and there's echoes of Stevie in the two actors who played them. Was it a conscious decision on your part to not exactly get them?
To not replicate them?
Yes.
Yes. I wrote it with these two guys specifically in mind. They've appeared in my other films, to a greater or lesser degree. It wouldn't interest me to make a realistic or conventional biopic, and it wouldn't interest me to cast people who really look like these guys. The whole point is that it's just sort of really wonky from the get-go. You just have to go with an instinct, I think. This whole film is really just a kind of me not questioning where my ideas come from or what I want to do, and to just be very pure about my gut feeling. And so it just felt funny to me that they're too old, they don't look like these guys. The guy who plays Paul McCartney is American and can't do a Liverpool accent to save his life.
I'm going to be honest, it does fade in and out a little bit.
Oh, well, it's meant. I mean, every time, from the very beginning, I think he thought that he had really studied the Scouse accent, and then after the first take, I think I said to him, "Okay, that was great. Now do it in a Liverpool accent," and that threw him completely. And I sort of belittled him continually to undermine his confidence.
But that's how you keep them in. That's how you keep actors invested. That's how you keep them coming back. They want to do better.
Well, absolutely, yeah.
So, how much more did you film? Because the film is about 1 hour 28, because I got the screen, it had it on the bottom. How much more did you film that ended up getting cut out? Was there any painful edits that you had to go through?
There's some scenes that are not in it. I mean, editing is always painful. It starts out as this sort of like magical process where you suddenly see it all coming together, and you feel so excited, and you need to hold on to that memory in a way, because when you first see scenes assembled and it feels powerful and it feels right, well, that's actually a true reaction. But as you get desensitized to the material and assemble the film as a full assembly, and then you start watching it as a feature film, I mean, I guess the key word is desensitized, and you start to question your instincts, I suppose. And also, this film is purposefully, I don't know what the word would be, but it's hopefully quite singular. It's maybe quite maddening. It's a bit repetitive. It's, it's definitely not for everybody, but that's just the kind of work that I make, I suppose. And then I have a host of producers with strong opinions and often conflicting opinions. And even though I've made a clearly not a conventional film or even necessarily a commercial film, although, there are some films do well commercially and you wouldn't expect it, and other films where clearly people are hoping that it's going to be a commercial hit and then it isn't. I mean, who knows? But I think there was some agenda from some producers that the film would work in a certain way and maybe have quite a brisk opening, and if when I look back on the editing process with all my films, I kind of end up feeling like, oh God, I wish I'd stuck to my guns and kept more in and made it even a bit more uncompromising and maybe a bit slower at times and purer. But I just don't know that people can handle it. You just end up at a place that feels like, after all the battles that you have as you're editing and all the knocks, and then standing up for yourself, hearing other people, trying some of their suggestions, then thinking, no, I don't like that. I want it to be more like this, and it's just kind of where you end up. That's again a very long answer, but I suppose I'm saying there are things that are lost, but independent filmmaking, there's always stuff that doesn't play out as you want it to, and stuff gets lost, or scenes get cut because you don't have time to shoot them, and you have to work on the fly in that way. And I mean, there's a part of the script that had to go, I suppose, like one significant part, and then I had to on the fly work out how to make it still flow.
You said something interesting there, which is something
Thank God.
something I'd like to come back to. Maybe this is just me being petty and childish, but you said something that people will question you and push back on you. As a filmmaker, do you get the urge when somebody gives you a note? I'm trying to think of an example. Like if somebody says this should be red, do you get the urge to be like, well, fuck you, now it's going to be blue. It's going to be the bluest blue you've ever seen. Is that something that you feel, particularly with your kind of style of film?
I think it depends how the note is proposed to me. If it's constructive criticism or it's or if it's proposed with sort of care and because they believe in the film and they want the film to work and they're worried that the film might not work, and in a way they're looking after the film and looking after me, then I can, I will really try my hardest to think around their note and to find the best way through. But yeah, sometimes, I mean, for sure, there's times where you might get notes where you just feel, well, you're just not understanding the film, and it's really annoying what you're suggesting, and you don't get it, and I'm going to double down a little bit. I mean, for sure, yeah, that can happen. I mean, I know with not with this film, but probably more with Greasy Strangler, there were a couple of scenes in it that are quite extended where everybody was wanting me to cut them shorter, and I elongated them. Well, then there was one scene where the main character, Big Ronnie, at this car wash, he walks and enters the loo to then get dressed within the loo, within the bathroom, and then comes out dressed, and then we track back with him. It's the sort of same shot, and he goes back to have a conversation with the car wash owner. And originally, when I cut the film, I held on the door when he was changing inside for about a minute and a half or something. And then he finally exited. And it was the time that I thought he would genuinely need to change. And it was, everybody's reaction was like it was like a massive calamity and pandemonium. And in the end, I did cut it down significantly. But I look back and think, well, I could have held my nerve. But then, there is some fear involved in holding your nerve to that extent, because we all have bills to pay. And even though I'm not making commercial films, I can't afford to not have someone want to distribute a film or show a film, or, it's like I'm kind of on a little bit towards the edge anyway with what I make. I mean, there's not many filmmakers like me in the UK who kind of push things maybe as much as I do in that sort of singular way. So it is a bit of a tightrope. I'm not trying to big myself up there, but I just don't know. I don't know who else does it.
Yeah, hindsight is also 20/20. You can look back on a film a few years later and say, okay, this
absolutely
worked and whatnot. So I'd like to ask a little bit about improvisation on the film. How much of the film was scripted, and how much did you let the actors just go and be Stevie and Paul?
Well, as already established, they weren't being Stevie and Paul.
Yeah.
No, I'm joking. There's always a fair amount of playing around and being spontaneous, but I would say that it doesn't really come from them. It comes from me. So it's more I might change things up or suggest things or take it somewhere different. Yeah. It's not really coming from them. I mean, Gil, who plays Stevie, I think he wasn't sleeping a lot during the shoot. I don't know if his memory is that reliable, and he struggled with some dialogue, and so there'd be times where it might go off piste a little bit.
Which again adds to the feeling.
Yeah, I've worked with him before. I know what I'm getting into, But afterwards, I always say to myself, okay, I can't. It's it's like you're shoehorning a performance out of someone. Sometimes it's exhausting.
What is next for you and the film? Where does it go from Glasgow?
Well, I know it's being released in the US in the autumn. Over here, I think we're still looking for a distributor. So yeah, I can't say I know entirely.
But hopefully it'll be out there.
Yeah, I mean, it will be out there in some form. There's one option at the moment in the UK, but we're exploring some others.
And if/when you hear feedback from Paul and Stevie, how do you think they will react to it? I like to think Paul will get it, but Stevie, maybe,
Well, Stevie can't. I mean, I'm not making a cheap joke. He can't see it anyway. I mean, he can't. I don't know how he watch his films if he does or whatever. With Paul, I mean, I've no idea whether he would ever know about it. I don't know whether he would even be interested in watching it. And if he did watch it, I mean, who knows? I don't know. I haven't really even thought about it.
We should, next year, if you're still alive, to come to the film festival and one of them hasn't gotten to you.
If I'm still alive, oh my God.
You never know. You never know.
Yeah.
The fingers of Stevie Wonder are far-reaching.
Right.
I hear.
Yeah. He does have a particularly long middle finger.
Yes. Thank you so much for your time today. It was lovely
You're
to
welcome.
meet you. Good luck with the film.
Cheers.